Hello again, and thank you for joining us here at the Network Tutor subscription series presented by Route Switch U. So we have lots of mechanisms configured on our Cisco Catalyst devices, and a lot of those mechanisms are security features that protect either the traffic flow or our hosts from actually being harmful to each other. And a lot of those mechanisms place our ports into error disabled state. You have a tough time managing error disabled mechanisms because it requires you to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning when somebody plugs in a hub on your network. So, to help mitigate or save your time, your administrative time in dealing with these error disables, you can utilize a mechanism called error disable recovery. Let's take a look at what that's all about. So error disabled interfaces require that you disable and re-enable the interfaces in a lot of cases to clear that error disabled state. What error disable recovery does for you is it does it automatically based off of a timer. So there are lots of causes that can potentially create this error disabled state. And it's important that you identify not only how long you want the device to wait before it recovers these error disabled interfaces, but you also want to determine that it's recovering for the right causes. So let's take a look at how to configure error disable recovery and what are some of the limitations you have to think about before actually deploying it on your network. All right, so let's take a look at error disable recovery mechanisms that are available to us within the Cisco Catalyst devices. First off, you should know that by default, these Cisco Catalyst devices have error disable recovery detection enabled for pretty much all things that you can error disable interface for. And rather than try to guess a list, let me go ahead and show you what is available for error disable recovery detection. You can do that with the show error disable. Let's actually use some context sensitive help. We have error disable detect and recovery here. Show error disable detect. And this will show all the instances and reasons why an interface will go into error disabled state. For dynamic ARP inspection, BPDU guard, misconfig in Ether channel for spanning tree protocol, DHCP rate limiting, dynamic trunking protocol flapping, GBIC is invalid, inline power, so PoE. We have link flaps, loopbacks. We hit our maximum MAC limit for port security interfaces, PAG-P flaps for Ether channel builds, port mode failures, port security violations. Our SFPs are mismatched, small frames on Ethernet segments, storm control, UDLD, and VMPS. So lots of reasons that we can go into error disabled state, and we are detecting on all of those. Now we could disable what we're detecting on, and we do that simply with the no error disable detect, and in this case, let's say loopback. Missing a few keywords here, cause loopback. We can question mark that up so you can see what's available after there. So you could disable it for all. Let's actually do that. Let's disable it for all. Do show and you can see that you can only disable on actually a few of them. So it's the list that's available here. Dynamic ARP inspection, GBIC invalid, etc. There's some that can't be turned off. It looks like inline power. So it's good to know ahead of time which ones you cannot disable error detection on. Now this doesn't mean you're actually going to do anything with that. It just means that the error disable mechanisms within the Catalyst device are ready to detect on those. Does not mean that they're actually going to restore any connectivity should that interface go into error disabled state. The way you do that is with error disable recovery. If we do some context sensitive help for error disable recovery, cause, you can see we have the full list here of potential items that we can recover on. So what does let's actually go to privilege exact. See that we have, in a previous config, we had enabled loopback for error disable recovery at a timer interval of 5 minutes. So if you wanted to, let's say you have port security implemented across your switching network and you want to re-enable interfaces after 5 minutes of reacting to a port security violation, you would simply enter the command error disable. Let's use context sensitive help here. Recovery, choose your cause. In this case, we're going to choose port security violation. We can see now that port security violations will now recover from error disabled state after an interval of 5 minutes. Now this interval is also configurable as well, but you can see that it's configurable not on a per error disabled reason basis. It's going to be for every error disabled recovery instance is going to apply that timer. So make sure that you're tuning it appropriately for what you have configured on your network. So if you have a storm control interface that's going into error disabled state, but you also have port security violations, you want to make sure that you're tuning it to prefer the storm control situation probably before you are the port security situation there. So the way to configure the timer is to use the interval command off of the error disable recovery configuration in global config mode. And you can see you set it in seconds between 30 seconds and 86,400 seconds. Let's go ahead and make that 180 seconds, so 3 minutes instead. You can see now that we are set for 180 seconds. To verify which interfaces are in error disabled state, you do a show. I believe it's show interface error disable. Sorry, I should know this. There it is. Show interface status and then error disabled. And this will show you all the interfaces that are actually error disabled at the time. So if you get a call into your NOC that somebody's unable to access but they were able to access a few minutes ago, you can do a show interface status error disabled to see if the device that they're actually connected to disabled their interface for a particular reason. And in there you can, based off of that reason, these reasons up here, listed up here, you'll be able to appropriately identify the reason why that port's error disabled and determine the proper course of action for the customer.